Fáilte. My name is Andrew Healy and I'm a lover and drinker of Irish whiskey. I'm on a journey of discovery to learn as much as I can about the great spirit of the Emerald Isle. Along that journey, I'm lucky enough to meet other people who are passionate about Irish whiskey, and the My Favourite Irish podcast is their story and their favourite Irish whiskey. Whether that's their current favourite, their first ever dram, or one that has a special place in their life. On this episode, I got to spend some time recently, well, I say recently, but it was actually back in March, with Jason Schneider, who has arguably one of the best jobs in the industry. Jason is the spirits buyer and general manager of the highly respected retailer Bottle Barn, which is located in the city of Santa Rosa in beautiful Sonoma wine country, about an hour from where I live. As I was editing this episode, it brought back to me what a fascinating and insightful conversation I'd had with Jason. We only got to chat for 20 or so minutes, but in that time we covered a lot of ground. We chatted about Bottle Barn's history and Jason's history at Bottle Barn while he was serving his apprenticeship there. It was great to go down rabbit holes about spirit sales and how the market has evolved in Jason's time at Bottle Barn. We talked about how whiskey is now the number one selling spirits category at Bottle Barn and who's buying that whiskey demographically. It was a fascinating chat and we managed to squeeze it all into just over 20 minutes as we both had work to do in preparation for St. Patrick's Day, which tells you how long ago we chatted. And of course we talked about all of this as we sipped on Jason's favourite Irish whiskey, which is the 14-year-old Single Malt from Knappogue Castle. Listen along. Fáilte Arash to everybody. You are very welcome back to My Favourite Irish. Not at a bar today. I'm sitting in an office in a barn with Jason Schneider. Jason, thanks for having me here, firstly.
Thanks for having me on the podcast. This is great.
So I'm at Bottle Barn in Santa Rosa. Folks won't know, we're recording this just before St. Patrick's in 2024. I'm here to pour some Powers Irish whiskey for you. Thank you for having me doing that. Powers, a brand I love. But we're here to talk about you, Bottle Barn, your favourite Irish whiskey, and we'll get into a little bit on pricing and supply, I think, as well. So
sure.
With that, we should get your favourite Irish into a glass. Well, we actually have it in a glass here. So
we're prepared.
Yeah, let's do a toast and then we'll talk about your favourite. Sláinte.
Cheers.
Lovely. So your favourite Irish, just so folks know, is Knappogue Castle.
Correct.
And tell us your history with Knappogue and the single malt that it is.
I think Knappogue was the first Irish whiskey so before I really cut my teeth on Irish whiskey, I was more familiar with American bourbon. I was familiar with Scotch, single malts. So the double cask aging that Knappogue does just made sense to me at the time, and it added, I had some basic, your Jamesons, your Bushmills, things like that, light, easy drinking, and I think Knappogue was the first Irish whiskey that sort of opened my eyes and, sort of had bigger, bolder flavors, and just something that I was more familiar with.
Yeah, so and it would be on your kind of rotation of tipples?
Yes,
yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. I like all things whiskey, and I spend a lot of time traveling to Kentucky and sourcing barrels for the company. So American whiskey I'm familiar with, but when I like to mix it up. I like to change it up. So
with that, I should actually tell people what you do here.
Oh yeah, right.
So
who is this guy?
Yes, you arguably have one of the best jobs in the industry. So you are the spirits buyer here at Bottle Barn.
Correct.
And so tell us the Bottle Barn story and your story.
So Bottle Barn was founded in 1990 by Bruce and Loretta Emmons. I started here in 1997. So that was like the dot-com boom and things were starting to pick up. First couple of years they struggled in this kind of industrial warehouse location. But right around 97, 98, things started looking up. There was a lot of young money in this area, Silicon Valley, that kind of thing. We're a couple of hours north of there, of course. But this store started growing. They hired a guy by the name of Ben Pearson to run the wine department. And he sort of put it on the map. when I first came on, I just did everything. I cashiered, I cleaned the bathrooms, mopped the floors, helped Ben out in the wine department. I took an interest in spirits, and what did I say? I started here in '97. By about '07, '08, I took over the spirit buying for the store.
It's a 10-year apprenticeship.
Yes, yes. And apprentice I did. I often say it's the only job that I don't mind taking my work home with me.
Yeah.
I do a lot of research. Yeah, so anyways, getting back to the store, 15,000 square foot store in Northern California. It used to be known as a wine shop.
Yeah.
That had a little bit of spirits and beer, and now I would like to think that we're known for our spirit selection, beer selection as well. And I think the consumer has evolved, especially in this area. It went from wine centric to it's a spirit mecca now too.
Yeah, yeah. No, interesting to hear you say that, and thanks for the the history in the background. I was here a few weeks ago, also pouring some powers, and obviously chatted with a number of your customers. Well, I was interested that there was a couple had come up from Berkeley in the East Bay,
Yeah.
and they were up to pick up their shipment. They had ordered wine through your online, and they used it as an excuse to come up to Sonoma wine country
Yeah.
for the day. They had lunch in Healdsburg, they had come down here, and just so folks know, we're in Santa Rosa in Sonoma County.
Right.
About an hour depending on the traffic.
Yeah, well, depending on traffic, right.
Cross the Golden Gate and up 101 here to Santa Rosa. So I said to you again before we jumped on, in the industry you're known and respected and loved for what you do here.
Well, thanks for saying that.
You provide a lot of opportunity for brands to showcase what they do. You have a great Irish whiskey selection here, so we'll talk about that in a
Thank
sec.
you.
But you've also a great selection of local whiskies and American
Sure.
whiskies generally. So obviously spirits are doing well for you.
100%. I think over the last 10 to 15 years, what we've seen the trend, wine is still strong and wine's king in Sonoma County, but wine's sort of leveled off and spirits probably starting, and I would like to take credit for it, but it's not me, but in the mid 2000s, 07, 08, 09, the interest in spirits was growing more and more. And then I think, COVID brought the cocktail culture
Yeah.
to life again. So the growth we see in this store is definitely in spirits and craft beer. And wine has leveled off a little bit.
So craft beer is doing an uptick again?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And it could be a localized thing for us. I mean, we have some of the most respected breweries in the world here in Sonoma County, and now you have all the young guns that have popped up in the last 5 years challenging the old guard. But yeah, craft spirits or craft beer is still big for us.
Interesting. I would obviously I live over the mountains, over the Mayacamas. I live over in Napa, where we don't have the diversity that you have in terms of the alcoholic beverage industry. We've one distillery, we've 2 or 3 breweries, I believe, small scale. Whereas over here in Sonoma, you've a good half dozen distilleries, and possibly a dozen to 15, maybe even 20 breweries.
Probably about
And
20.
and as you said, the Russian River Brewery at the top of the pile, Lagunitas right there with them. Any reason why you think there's that diversity here?
That's a great question. So I'm not from Sonoma County. I'll say that. I moved here in the mid '90s. I was in my late 20s. But part of the reason I've stayed in this area is it's a very adventurous group of people that live here. I think maybe being weaned on wine and agriculture, there's just this lust for life and just this interest in high quality products. So I think it was just natural. Once the wine industry sort of reaches apex, people started looking for other areas.
Okay.
And you have the agricultural tie-in.
Yeah.
So I think, obviously all these products are agriculture.
Yeah.
Right? Whiskey, beer. And it's just it's an interesting part of the world to live in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, again, not trying to diss either county,
Yeah.
To me, I talked about diversity there in the the beverage areas, but you've also got a wonderful dairy industry over here when you go out towards the coast.
Yeah.
So you have that lovely diversity of the coast. We love going out to the coast for for oysters out at Point Reyes and Bodega Bay.
Tamales.
Yeah. But then you also have the mountains, and you have the redwoods in the north of the county, and you have the southern part of the county touches the bay around Carnera. So to me, there's just this wonderful diversity here. I think it's part of the Sonoma culture. I think you're right. I think you've kind of hit that one on the head, that it's just kind of how the culture is here.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the job of buying spirits.
Yeah. You said it. It's the best job maybe in the world.
So I know we love and respect the work that gets done by the brewers and distillers and the work that they do. Obviously, then it has to get marketed and then sold. Sure. You're the last part in that kind of that process. You're the last cog in the wheel, and getting it onto the shelf. You're obviously the gatekeeper for that. So, how many people are coming through here with new products? How do you vet them? Wow. When is there enough on the shelf?
It's definitely the biggest challenge of the job. Probably is making time for everyone and knowing enough to know that I don't know it all. When I first saw Tito's handmade vodka from Austin, Texas, I chuckled to myself, like, good luck. Bullet bourbon. I was like, do we need another bourbon? Don't we have enough? So I'm wrong a lot. But trying to keep an open mind. I probably see regular reps, probably 20 a week, and then suppliers by appointment. At least 5 or 6 suppliers a week.
Wow.
On average. I've had to limit the tasting in store because I have, I'm also the general manager of the store and I have a lot of other responsibilities. So,
the less fun ones.
Yeah, but I do take a lot of samples and on my free time. I've never really thought of this as a job. I don't want to sound hokey, but it's just. These are things I'm interested in. It's my it's my life, So when I'm at home, I try samples and things like that. And I also find being able to do it in a more relaxed setting, like my own home.
Well, you're not getting interrupted all the time.
I'm not getting interrupted. You don't have to taste in front of somebody where, you feel like you owe them something, or, I can fairly evaluate the products. And I think I've also learned over the years to understand their place in the world. Like, we have a big store, so in some ways I have an easy job. I could buy anything, right? Give it a try, and I try to give products in all price points, all quality levels, and opportunity. Because if I was only buying for myself, it would be as big as my liquor cabinet at home, which my wife will tell you is now spilled into the garage,
it's too big,
and into the downstairs, and into closets.
I know that,
but it wouldn't be 15,000 square feet.
Yeah. So you have a little bit of latitude then to take stuff in and give it a try.
Yeah. The ownership here we're under new ownership in the last 8 years. I say new, 8 years, but both owners I've worked for have completely let the staff here do their jobs, and I don't work under a budget. I don't have purse strings that get tightened up on me. They trust that we know what we're doing. Okay. And I like to, I get excited for new brands. Yeah. I want them to succeed, right? Like, what's good for them is good for me. What's good for the consumer.
Yeah. And it works all the way through the supply line. It helps the distributor, helps the importer. And obviously, one of the things you do really well here is your tasting program. Because who's going to spend $30, $40, $50, $100 on a bottle if they haven't tried it, if they don't know the brand, if they don't know the story behind it? So I know your calendar is full, and people fight to get on it.
Well, shout out to Jonathan Parnell, JP, our tasting coordinator here, and my right-hand man. He helps me, particularly with the agave spirits. That's his specialty, but he's a whiskey guy. He has a great palate, and he puts that tasting calendar together. And I agree. I think it's great for the consumer, and it's great for the industry as a whole, just getting things in people's hands.
And it gives me an excuse to sit down with people like you and actually have a chat and build a relationship, which is great. So we touched on, you've got a little a hideaway area here where the restroom is, but it's also where you store your unicorns and your gems.
Right.
And we touched on pricing as we were there. So let's, we've got about 5 or 6 more minutes. Let's touch on supply and pricing. Obviously, Irish whiskey is my thing, but talk about it for whiskey generally. You've seen it. You've seen some changes.
It's insane. So when I first started here in the late 90s, I mean, whiskey was always whiskey, right? But we might have had, if we had a dozen Irish whiskeys, maybe I'm exaggerating, that would be with multiple sizes, you know? Okay. Even American bourbon, there was the big producers. Whiskey and vodka was our far and away number one selling spirit in the store. And it was that way for a good decade of working here. In the last 5 years or so, bourbon has overtaken, that's our number one SKU. Whiskey as a category as a whole, if you include Irish, Japanese, Scotch, everything, it like doubles everything else we sell. So vodka is now third in our store. So whiskey's number one, tequila's number two, vodka's number three. And the amount of products available, you know, the specialty products, you know, there's Irish, like Teeling, for example.
Yeah.
What do they have? 7 facings on our shelf right now, different SKUs, and they all sell well. You know, these aren't just excuses to, let's get more products on the shelves. They're all, I think the industry as a whole has become a lot more innovative and willing to take chances.
And experiment, and for me, it's about flavor. And I know that's what Teeling hang their hat on. It's flavor.
Yeah.
But when
using
you look
unique barrels to age, you know, secondary aging. So I don't know if I'm answering your question.
No, you am.
Right or not, but whiskey in general has just exploded, and I wish I had more space. Like, I think we have a pretty nice set of Irish whiskey. I know there's more out there. I know we can, you know, I run out of room nowadays. You know, we're, you know, things are stacked everywhere, and you're right. We have our little secret, you know, shelves in the back, and there's even a room back there with more secret stuff under lock and key. But it's great to see. People often ask me if do I think the bubble is going to burst on it and this or that? And I think all good things at some point level off, but I don't see that happening for some time now. I think, unlike something like flavored vodka or these, you know, quote unquote trends in the industry, whiskey is such a quality product, and so many people that are making it are doing such a great job that even if some people fall off of it, they're going to gain so many new fans every year that when people finally get to try this stuff, I think they get hooked for life. So I think it's here to stay.
Yeah, we'll touch on that in a second.
Yeah.
I'll just kind of say the reminder, so we talk about kind of the ages of people that are drinking it, but I want to talk about pricing.
Okay.
So with all of that demand that you've talked about and sales growing, particular brands, both Irish and American and Scotch, I think from all of the subcategories, the pricing has gone, I'm not sure what the word is, crazy, bonkers.
Bonkers is the first thing that came to my mind. Yeah, right.
So you've seen that. So kind of talk me through that in terms of, you know, when, obviously Knappogue is part of the Irish distiller stable, but it's brought in through Lafayette Imports, and they distribute to you through RNDC.
Correct.
So when they come in and they say, you know, Jason, the price on a 6-pack has gone from X to X, sometimes X2. What does that make you think in terms of space on the shelf?
I mean, so if it's going up to me, it's going up to everybody, and we work off slimmer margins than most. So what can I do about price changes, right?
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't deter me from buying per se. The market always corrects itself. I think we're seeing, I'll use Scotch as an example right now.
Yeah.
Single malt Scotch sales have fallen off for us. They've taken the biggest price increases that I've seen in the world of whiskey over the last few years. Now you could argue specialty bourbon has gone completely, but there's so few of that out there. Scotch as a whole, almost all, you know, from inexpensive entry level stuff on up has taken. And there was the tariffs, and there's other factors. It's not just supply and demand. I know there's other factors that have inflation and things like that. But I think the market corrects itself. So when a supplier comes in and tells me the price goes up, I mean, what am I going to do? We just roll with the punches, and I think eventually we're the end of the line. The consumer will let them know when enough is enough, right?
Yeah, no, all of this is consumer driven.
Yeah.
So consumers, demographics, ages. Are you seeing people drink whiskey younger?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it's a huge, broad range for us in terms of our customers, but I don't remember. I was one of very few people of my age group in the 20s that took an interest in whiskey. People drank whiskey to party and have fun, but I don't remember. I didn't have a large group of friends that were into these products. I just thought it was something unique to me, something weird I just like to do. Now we call them the bourbon bros, the whiskey bros. I spend a good deal of my days talking shop, talking whiskey, and now the ages are I've got sons of and daughters of the people that I've known forever. They're now shopping with us because I've been here so long.
The generational
shift, and they're into whiskey. So it's from I would say 21, 22-year-old
really
on up. But I would say the sweet spot for us, it seems like guys in their late 30s, early 40s. Into their 60s are the core customer.
Okay, interesting.
The everyday drinker.
Yeah, I on a personal level, I kind of matured into brown spirits in my 40s.
Yeah, okay,
But I am seeing more and more people coming to whiskey and other brown spirits younger. I think possibly where it's more difficult with whiskey is we don't kind of have a ladder or a stepping stone. So with tequila you have obviously Blanco and Cristalano into Reposado, whereas whiskey is brown from the out of the gate.
Yeah.
And while there are white spirits made in a number of other countries, we make our poitín in Ireland. It hasn't really. But no, interesting to hear that it's gotten younger.
What we see is a huge crossover from the beer drinker to the whiskey drinker, and the beer drinker tends to be a younger crowd for the most part.
Yeah.
And a lot of those guys and gals got interested in whiskey along with their interest in craft beer.
I'm going to suggest, Jason, that it's a journey in flavor for them.
Yeah.
Craft beers are flavorsome.
Yeah.
And whiskey, as we know, is as well. So maybe that's the reason there's a bridge between the two. So
great point.
Fantastic. We could chat all day, but
this is fun.
We both got to work.
Yeah.
I've got to go and pour some whiskey and help people enjoy their coming St. Patrick's weekend. And you've got to go out and make sure the shelves are stocked.
That's right.
So I'm going to toast you again, Sláinte. Lovely for your time.
Cheers, my friend.
I'll have all the details of Bottle Barn in the show notes for the podcast when it goes up, so people can, when they're up in Sonoma wine country, they can stop in and they can
come say hi, please.
Do some damage to their credit cards.
Yes,
that's the hope. With that, we'll say Sláinte. Cheers.
Right. Thank you.
If you've made it this far, I want to say Gurav Mila Mahagat, or thank you very much for taking the time to listen to this episode. If you have time in your busy schedule, I'd be grateful if you could take a few minutes to leave a rating and maybe even a review, as this helps spread the Irish whiskey love. You'll find more episodes wherever you listen to your podcasts, and you'll find some of these podcasts as videos on my website at irishwhiskeylad.com. That's Irish whiskey with an E, LAD.com. Until next time, Sláinte Mhath.